You gon' know it when I slide, yeah.
Hey everybody, my name is Brandon Mays.
I'm Jeremy Darnell.
And this is the TLP Pod, and we have a very, very exciting guest with us tonight. It is Coach Julie Carlson of the Greenville Triumph and the head coach of the Greenville Liberty. Julie, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Awesome. We are so glad you could join us as we the Liberty season is coming up super quickly. I mean, I feel like it's like snuck up on me here. We've got about a week, is that right? A little over that?
Just about. About a week, couple weeks, yeah.
So when does training start for y'all?
So we're officially kicking off May 1st. Wednesday evening we'll train. Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. Nice. Coming up very, very soon. All right, cool. Well, Julie, today we want to get to know you a little bit. I know a lot of people around Greenville kind of know who you are, have seen your face, probably know a little bit about you. But we're going to have some fun tonight. We're going to start off with some rapid fire questions just to hear some things about you. My most important questions, the question I ask every single person that comes on this podcast, whether they like it or not, I got to know, Julie, what's your favorite cereal?
Oh, that's a tough one. Because I'm not actually a big cereal eater. I'm more of an oatmeal, blueberry, and walnut breakfast person. But if I had to choose, I would say probably like Special K or Honey Nut Cheerios. It's good for the heart.
Yeah, fantastic. That's fantastic. That's a staple at my home right now. It's just nothing but Honey Nut Cheerios.
Yeah, those are always in my house as well for the little guy.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with those.
You cannot.
Well,
Julie,
breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like,
See?
Yeah.
See? You've learned that from Rick, huh?
Yeah. Well,
exactly.
I'm not Captain Crunch. I didn't want to steal his thunder on the Captain Crunch, but I'll definitely go with the Honey Nut Cheerios.
It's a good one. So what's one item you can't live without?
In my current state, I would say a pencil, and that's probably going to be really strange to a lot of people. But I think people are going to go, why a pencil? Well, a pencil is one, it's biodegradable because I'm a little earth-friendly kind of person. And then pencils, when you're working with, in my field, taking a lot of notes, and you're doing a lot of scratching and erasing and, doing a lot of just doodling and stuff like that, pencils are probably the best use versus a pen. Right. And so it's, because you're always losing pens. And in our world, we're taking notes, we're writing stuff down, we're drafting sessions. And so I thought of a unique thing would be probably a pencil. I can't live without a pencil in my career. Yeah.
Okay. Well said.
Do you have one of those like grid books for all of your sessions? Do you use one of those?
I do. Most of my stuff I'm starting to getting internet friendly. So I'm starting to store a lot of stuff on the computer, when we draft it or whatever, or just keep a notebook of stuff. But I feel like you're kind of like this crazy professor where you just have stuff written on a cocktail napkin or a paper towel, or you just come up with random things and you just sketch it out. And so you end up, I'm a big 3x5, 5x7 card person. So I have a lot of notes taken on that. And eventually you have to kind of go back and take your file and like regroup everything. And like you're rewriting your editorials for a book. But yeah, it's a little bit of a hodgepodge, but I think that's just kind of how we work when the ideas just come to play. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to write it down where you can. So yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
That makes
absolutely.
sense. The pencil definitely makes sense. Okay, I guess I'm going to keep going with the food vibe because apparently that's all I can think about. So let's say, what's your favorite meal?
My favorite meal is Tex-Mex.
Okay.
So I'm from Dallas. So one of the first things I have to do when I go back to Dallas, Texas is have fajitas. Like the whole combination fajitas of steak, chicken, and shrimp. They're some of the best I've ever had. And Dallas is a great place for restaurants and they have wonderful food, but Mexican food is fajitas is my go-to. Yeah.
I have a buddy who's from Houston, and like that was like he always bragged about it. He's like, it's so much better. And like, we could never, like, if we ever talked about Mexican food, it was just like, oh, that stuff's horrible. Like I could get it so much better in Texas. So I do have a follow-up question then to that. You're here in Greenville, and you have to get Tex-Mex here somewhere. Where's your go-to?
Mm-hmm.
You're willing to share?
Probably Paria's off of Woodruff, because they make their guacamole from scratch.
Okay,
yeah, that place is good.
So I'm not a fan of guacamole out of the tub. They'll do it right there from scratch. I'm a big fan of scratch made guacamole, so I do like Paria.
Okay, fantastic. You heard it here first, folks. Paria's the place to go.
So maybe they'll be one of our food sponsors soon or something.
Yeah.
But yeah,
there you go. Yeah,
so,
no, that's amazing.
So, Coach Carlson, who is a coach or a player who has inspired you the most in your own career within the sport?
That's a really good question. I think it's a hard question for me to answer. I know a lot of people have their go-to mentors, or people that they've kind of grown up working with. And, I came up at a really weird age, a generation gap where there wasn't a lot of women coaches. And so you had your, call it your Pat Summits of the world, but they weren't, you didn't see them on TV. You didn't hear about them as much. You didn't get an inside look at them. You didn't hear about their philosophies and how they grew their programs. And so, I kind of have taken bits and pieces from people over my career. The most recent one would be Emma Hayes. She just came out with a book called Kill the Unicorn. And, it's only a book on tape. You can't get it in written format or textbook format. But just really more of a takeaway from all of some of the greats. And, her being one on the female side, Alex Ferguson being one on the men's side over the years, because they've built programs and they've had influence within their game, both as a coach, as a manager, and as a mentor. And so I don't really have one go-to. I've basically taken a lot of things from different people that I've studied and just try to study what they do and what works best for me.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, and I look forward to, Emma Hayes is fascinating. And the more you read about her and read her words and her philosophies and her ideas, not just about the game, but about life, she's a fascinating person. So I'm looking forward to her being in and around our media landscape a lot more in the coming years. So fascinating.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing about the decade that we're in now is you're starting to read about those women and their successes and what philosophies they followed and what's worked and what hasn't worked and some of the trials and tribulations that they've faced. I recently am in the middle of Serena Wigman, that's done the Lionesses. She just came out with one as well. And so I'm, about to finish that one. And so it's just really interesting to see a lot of, even when you go back and read somebody like Alex Ferguson and Emma Hayes, there's so many differences, yet there's so many similarities between what they actually do and what works for them. So I think that's really where I get a lot of my mentorship or my education from, to try to just learn from some of the greats and just the takeaways, just simple things like people like Dawn Staley. What makes her great? She's a very humble human being. I think it's important that we always have to remember where we came from, because we all started somewhere, but we just didn't get there overnight. And so it's important that we reflect a lot of what we've done and how we can continue to learn and grow. And so, I think I've just taken a lot of that way because I've never taken an easy road in my path. So, you look at my bio, I've not taken easy jobs, kind of a trend. It's not, I don't know why, it just seems to be a trend, but I've taken a lot away from the people I've worked with, the players I've worked with, the institutions I've worked with and around. And I think that's just molded me on who I am now.
Yeah, fascinating.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Mhm.
Well,
I would say you probably have some intellectual security, and that's why you chose those positions, because you're a courageous person.
Yeah, it's like it's a different warpath I've traveled. Um, some of it was just like I wasn't afraid, I think, to take it on. I was willing to take it on. And then, there's that phrase of like, you look at yourself in the mirror to try to decide who you are and which path you want to travel. And it's just like, wow, am I really doing this? And, I think it really tests your character. I think it tests your loyalty. I think it tests so many different elements of your mentality. And I had to grow up fast, and I wouldn't say it's been easy. I'm like anybody, I'm like any human being, I haven't made always the best decisions, but I've also learned a lot from great decisions, and I've learned a lot from poor decision making. And I've tried to make sure that I've always tried to surround myself with good people. I think that's one of the biggest factors in traveling that path.
Right.
Oh man, for sure. So you've come this far, obviously. You've come a long way. What made you decide to want to start this route in the first place? Like what triggered you to want to be a coach?
Well, I think it's like any of us. I don't think any of us, 30, 40 years ago ever thought we'd get into coaching. We thought we'd maybe get into education or teaching or science or pre-med or some health related field. And, I just kind of stumbled upon it. I was playing collegiately at the time, and we had a graduate assistant who asked me to assist her with something called ODP, which doesn't really exist anymore, Olympic Development Program. We were designed in the Ohio South area in districts, and she asked me if I would come and assist her with the U12 boys age group. And I was still in college playing. I was a junior. And it was funny because I just asked her, I said, well, you've got 25 players on this team. Why are you asking me to come and help you? And she said, because you always have the right answer every time we ask a question with the group. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I tried it out, and, it was a shoe that fit really well for me. I was able to influence young players, and, it's simple. It was as simple as teaching them how to do little step over moves and different types of technical moves, and then watch them adapt that into a competitive environment and see that. And I was like, wow, you know what? I think this might be something I really would enjoy doing. And she ended up taking a different job at a college as a full-time employee, and I got stuck with the 60 U12 boys and having to divide them up into A, B, and C groups based on level of ability. And there's actually a really funny story to this, because this will show my personality to people listening to this that know me very well. As I was very clear to these 60 kids, I basically said, I don't care what club you play for. You can wear whatever uniform you want. I really don't care what club you play for. I just want to know if you're good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Are you good enough? Because you're going to be defined based on level of ability, not what club you play for. Because, they all wear in their club uniforms and,
Right.
Trying to differentiate why I play for the best club in this area, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't know you. I don't know your club, and I don't care. And I had to go A, B, and C. And that just I look back on that now that I can actually remember all of that as if it was yesterday, because I did have unhappy parents. I had parents, why was my son not selected with all of his teammates? Well, your son wasn't at the same level as this group or that group. And I had to handle all of that. And I was 20 years old. And so, so that just kind of jump started me in my path with soccer. And then I started doing some youth club work and some ODP work, and then finished college and ended up with my first assistant collegiate job at Miami University of Ohio. Mm-hmm. And that's just through the network. You just start to know people and learn people and travel the path. So that really is what kickstarted my career and got me really interested in doing it.
And I mean, you've had a ton of jobs since then that are, big jobs. Worked with Clemson, worked with VMI. What kind of goals, what do you see coming for you next? I mean, obviously you're the head coach of the Liberty. You're working with the Triumph as well. What kind of goals do you have as far as your coaching career?
Sure. I think, is either to continue to grow the Liberty and the Triumph, helping the club get their forever home, helping grow a stronger youth platform base underneath our men's and women's team in the upstate, to start offering more opportunity within that infrastructure for academy players, both, on the boys side, obviously the girls side with the academy that we've currently sustained with the U20s. And that age range is anywhere from 16, to 19, those players becoming feeders into our pre-pro team. So it's really just continuing to build a strong foundation and continue to get the community support, build bigger sponsorship and the growth. There's a lot of strong investment here, and, the children are the reason we do this. And the kids, and giving them to really be able to, as Rick, quoting Rick on this, taste it, feel it, smell it, like just the game itself. And, being able to create a strong atmosphere for these kids to continue to develop and grow and pursue their dreams. So that sounds unselfish but that's, me, it's building the bigger picture. But I am investing in that 16-year-old player to get her where she needs to be. For me, what is the next step? Do I want to go back to college? I don't know. Now with the pro league starting up with this new USL Super League, is there an opportunity to me advance myself as a pro coach? On the women's side, because obviously now I'm a little bit differently staffed on the men's side with Rick's new staffing. And so just being in that pro environment is really, for me, I'll take the opportunities that they come and decide if it's the right fit for me, because I'm very happy doing what I'm doing. I was trying to maintain sustainability with that and continue to grow the brand of the Liberty to make sure that everybody knows how special it is and what we try to do and continue to perfect that. But, my ultimate goal, it's if somebody comes and picks up the phone and calls me, I would say probably the next step is a pro job from here. I would invite the invitation to talk about it and see if it is the right thing for me to do at this point in my life.
Well, I know Chelsea's going to be hiring, it sounds like. So, if that, maybe they'll give you a call. Yeah. But no, I will say I really loved, the thing you've mentioned time and time again is that passion for the holistic development of those players from, when they're young, even when you're, talking about your first job, having that, the opportunity thrust upon you to work with those U12 boys. You have a real passion for developing players and getting them to achieve their best. And I really love that. We've seen that kind of in the roster, I think, this year a little bit too, and how you've put together the roster. There's a lot of people who could really prove themselves this year on the Liberty roster. So I wanted to say, I really appreciate that about you as a coach. I see, you've talked about it a ton, and we see it happening in the roster construction. That's really cool to me as someone who lives in this community, who's seeing kids who grew up here get their chance and their shot, and you believing in them. So as far as, I know, if a pro club comes knocking, that's a hard decision to make, but I just wanted to say, from my perspective, we really appreciate how you have really taken charge of the youth development of our guys and our girls specifically. And given a lot of opportunities to players and are continuing to do so. So really appreciate that. And obviously, like you kind of hinted at, you have joined Rick Wright's coaching staff this year. And some of that, I guess, maybe, I don't know if this is the whole reason or just part of the reason. I imagine just part of the reason, because you all have a great relationship already, but there was that whole thing with the USL Forward program. So you're kind of doing some coursework alongside being on staff with Rick. Is that right? Right now? Is that how that works?
Yeah, it was basically a month, which was primarily the preseason period where there was like 5 of us that were candidates. Some were in a homegrown area, some were based outside of their environment. Some were brought in into a new environment, but it was, obviously designed for, women, minorities of color, and for opportunities to be in a pro environment, to see the inner workings. And we've all, we meet probably every few weeks. We meet, some are still involved, some are done. Me, obviously someone who still continues to be involved. And, our goal now is to help with the next participants that come into the folds, because now it's an application process where the 5 of us were actually selected. It's interesting that you ask, because, right now, we're talking about the holistic side of players and their development, but we need the societal side of the pro game to be more holistic about developing women and minorities of color, to promote through the pro ranks across not just our country, but across the world, is trying to change that landscape and trust that we have the ability to perform and do the duties in those positions. And so the USL really stepped forward and created this DEI Forward program. U.S. Soccer is all about it. They've been getting a ton of feedback, a lot of traction from this program. They like to kick around to me all the time that I was like the poster child a little bit of getting that program kicked off, because they were encouraging me to apply for the pro course. And so I did apply, but then I didn't get in. And it had mostly to do with the fact that I wasn't an established pro coach within a staff infrastructure. And so typically they only take about 10 to 12 candidates. And usually the female candidate pool is extremely small. It's probably about 2. And so it's very hard to travel that path. And so instead of making it more difficult, can we try to find a way to create a intrinsic and more equitable environment where people like myself are more involved with pro teams in some capacity, which we can talk about what I do in a second, but or how my role plays out, but really just to get more hands-on experience to allow us to get our foot in the door, to allow the promotion of the equity minority side of it moving forward, because we still see the stigma of the same coaches, the same types of coaches through the carousel. And, we're trying to move that ladder, and it's always going to be a little difficult for sure, but that's the goal, right? So that's the goal, to bring more of those people into the folds. Because now we have, back in my day, had a slow stream of females coming through. It dropped off there for a long time, but now you're starting to see a stream of very young ones. And so now people like myself are becoming mentors of that young stream, but we're also starting to see a large stream of, Black and Hispanic coaches, male and female, coming through. The bilingual piece is so crucial now, and how we can get those people educated. And get them into the network. Yeah. So that's really kind of a transforming piece of the whole USL Forward side.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and for you specifically, like this is your coaching career and your coaching path. Obviously, is nothing to shake a fist at. You've got your USSFA license, right? The second highest license that you can get in the United States. And so, I mean, you've done the work to be where you need to be, to have those opportunities. And honestly, it's one of those things where it's almost like it's pastime, right? For people to recognize that people like you have the talent and the credentials to make things happen at a high level, right? And so the fact that the USL is doing this, it's awesome. But it's almost like, it's like finally, like people who have the credentials, who are doing the work, who have been doing the work, especially as minorities, like they're finally getting their chances. And so, I mean, I assume now, like you're pretty much on the staff for this entire year. It sounds like, is that correct for the Triumph?
Yeah. So it's kind of, so I've been with Rick since the whole beginning, like even before we got Mark hired and he was going through the assistant coach hiring process, just to get things off the ground, right? We did the tryout, we were doing trials, we had trialists in and out. He was interviewing people for the assistant position and trying to, and we're getting ready to start our preseason. And so, we still had obviously administrative staff. We still have Rachel, our trainer, and Ryan, sports performance, and Chris with director of ops. But then it was the coaching piece. And Rick is a salesman. He's a talker and he has so many calls and you got agents calling. And so, I felt like my role was very step in, pick up the pieces, help with the tryouts, run the session, really kind of check a lot of boxes for him so he could get around and do what he felt he needed to do as we rebuilt this team, whether it was signing new players, re-signing old players. That was a whirlwind for, several weeks, and, Mark stepping in when most of the team's pretty much set, except for some new and late signees. And so, you had to have somebody who kind of knew the ropes a little bit. So I think that's where, Rick and I sat down and had coffee. What's my role? What do you need me to do? Because eventually, where we are right now, and into April, going into May, I'm getting ready to separate myself, because now my attention's all on the women's team. Not that I'm not giving any attention to the men's side, but it will be extremely limited for the next, call it 2.5 months. And then when that season wraps up, then I'll re-engage and go back to the men and assist them however they need. And, I think for me, it was, I've worn a ton of different hats. So I can help with the film. I can help with functional training. I can take a group. I'll travel with them sometimes, not all the time. That's logistics and budget based, scout film. I think a lot of people didn't know this, but, the first half, I actually go high up into the stands and watch it from the TV view, right? So I'm looking at space, I'm looking at formation, I'm looking at any sort of tendencies that maybe were different from going into the scout. And so I bring back a different set of eyes or a different perspective after the first half. And that's really, I think, the biggest role that I've played in the match piece. And then I'll go down and sit with them during the second half. So that's really been my role, is just filling in and being that extra hand as needed and giving different perspective, because sometimes my perspective is very different, and or I see a way that maybe they should try something else or think about it this way. And so it's just, and then we've obviously been able to come up with this best product that we have so far. So I think, a lot of kudos to Mark stepping into a pro role, being with the youth side at Chattanooga for so long. And then, Rick's very different. He's very engaging as one big group, and, wants to hear everybody's thoughts. you know, and so I've been very honored by Rick. Rick was really the one that got my connection with Joe Irwin and Chris Lewis at the club when we were starting the Liberty team. And so that's the one person I knew was Rick. And so that's kind of, we've had that relationship, you know, for a longer period of time. And so, but he's a fun dude. He's, he makes it entertaining. He's enjoyable. I mean, we're always laughing and enjoying what we do. And I think that's extremely important.
Yeah. Coach, I have a question for you there. Just you think you speaking there. So as you perform a role, say as an assistant coach or as part of a staff, how do you think that will change or inform the way you go forward as a head coach of a team? Is it something where you've learned something in this role that you feel like you will now take to a head coaching role?
Oh, absolutely. I think there was an old saying where coaching is probably one of the biggest stealing positions. You know, you steal things. It's the one job where you steal stuff. You steal ideas, you steal methodology, you steal activities. But I think the biggest key is things that I've experienced just with the men don't always work with the women, and vice versa. And there's some things I can take from working with the men's side that I think can very well be used on the women's side, because soccer is still soccer. You know, the difference is male and females and how they learn, and how you work with them is very different. But the game is still the same. The objectives are still the same. But just because the men play a 3-5-2 doesn't mean that suits the women that we're bringing in. Like, so for me right now, I'm looking at it and going, I think we might be playing more of a 4-4-2, 4-4-3 concept, maybe not the 3-5-2 based on personnel. And so I think that's where you have to make sure that you're doing what's best. And then leaving an assistant role into a head coaching role, you're at a different platform. You have more of a voice. You have to be more of a decision maker. You're not just the idea person. Right? You're getting ideas from your staff and actually having to make concrete decisions. And so I think it's learning from, hey, did these decisions work for Rick or the men's side when they made them? You know, you're kind of learning from that and saying, well, that worked for the men. Would it work for the women if the situation were the same? And so it's about adapting. And it's about adjusting, getting the temperature right and making sure the recipe and the ingredients work. And so that's really what you play around with. And the hard part with the women's side, moving from being an assistant to a head, is I hit the ground running and I have 8 days to put this together. I don't have a month and a bunch of exhibition games to get it to screw up and fail. Right. And so, pressure is very self-induced. I don't feel a lot of pressure because I know I have a very young team, but I have to make sure that I'm going in and addressing them with a lot of confidence in them to be able to be ready and do all the right things and do their best. There is going to be mistakes made, but we address them as we go, because that's the nature of the game. They have to be able, and we do this with the men, and the women are no different, but they have to be able to problem solve and make decisions in the fly within the run of play of the game. And you have to trust them to be able to do that. And so it's important that in that very first 8 days leading into May 10th, that relationship between me and them is built. That's why veteran players are so important. That's why new players these young players with a lot of energy that came out of the academy that I've already earned trust with, and then new players who have heard about the Liberty or want something different, and then they start talking to those veteran players about how they would enjoy playing here. And so obviously trust is initiated right off the bat, and it's my job to make sure I don't screw that up. So if that it's long-winded, but
it's
very
perfect.
philosophical. Yeah.
Well, and that goes back to what you were talking about earlier. I mean, the rapid fire questions are perfect, sans the food ones. You talked a lot about all the people you've been pulling information from forever, right? Like you have this hunger for knowledge, this hunger to learn and adapt, and taking that into this role. And honestly, these pre-pro leagues, USL2, USLW, they're a pressure cooker. I mean, like you get out, you leave college, everybody gets together. Like you said, you have like 8 days, and then you have an absurd number of games, and then you go back to school. And you as a coach, all of a sudden have to try and manage all that, keep everybody together, keep everybody pushing in the same direction. So, I mean, like that's a huge job. And it's awesome. Like, obviously you've had all of these opportunities to learn and grow, but like, it sounds like this is just kind of like this, everything you've done before this, and even this season with the Triumph so far is really, continuing to prepare you and push you, especially with this younger group of players this year, and inspiring confidence in them. So I really love that. And that was a really cool thing to that clicked in my head just now when I was thinking through your statement there. It's awesome. I guess for me, thinking about this coming into this season, this is your third season now with the Liberty, and you've had ups and downs. Everything is you had a great season, and not a perfect season last season, but there's still a lot of great stuff to come from 2023. What's kind of been your the thing that you hang your hat on as the coach of the Liberty? What's the thing that is your pride point around this team since you've been here?
The biggest pride point I have with the Liberty is I want us to be a unique club than any other club. And in that sense, I mean, I try to do things each season, what makes us unique from everyone else. This year, one of the most unique things for 2024 is we have an all-female staff, which we haven't had in the past, and most programs don't. That goal has been to upbring young female coaches or women that want to get into coaching and want to learn. The other side of it was really stipulating, I need to make sure that if you're going to come and play in this team, you're committed for the summer. Yes, you might have a few conflicts here and there, but you have to be fully committed. And that turns some people away. And so I think part of it is that impacts culture. That impacts the internal culture, because there are a lot of kids, they may not be the most talented, but there's a lot to be said for commitment. And there's a lot to be said for kids who want to be here every day. And so I think that that's a really important trend, because our young people, our young athletes need to know how to do that. They need to know that responsibility and that commitment going forward in everything that they do. And the other unique side to the Liberty is how we treat them and what we provide them compared to most clubs. And we give them as much as we possibly can in the same way we treat our men's team outside of paying them a salary. They get the same sports performance treatment. They get the same companies and trade. They get the same recovery. They get the same memberships. They get all the amenities to enjoy their summer. Whether it's our agreement with Soul Yoga, where they get a year membership, whether it's a membership with our relationship with the YMCA and they get a whole summer membership. And who doesn't want to live in Greenville in the summer? What a great place to spend a summer. You're not that far from the lake. You're not that far from the beach. You're not that far from the trails and the mountains. And so you can really have a great, fun, enjoyable summer for 2 months and then invest in doing what you love to do to get yourself prepared. And I think the biggest and most important thing is we're not here running them in a track meet. You're here to play soccer. And so they don't have to put out the cones. It's going to be fun, but it's going to have structure. It's going to have purpose. And then So I want to make sure that this is a program that players want to come in here because they want to get better. And they know that we're going to care about them and respect them and do the right things to make not only the atmosphere as fun as it was last night for the men's team, but, we're going to have a good time. We're going to do what we love to do. We're going to have a good time. There's, of course, winning is everybody always wants to win, but we got to talk about the process. And I think it's just giving – a lot of times these kids are coming from a D2 or a D3 program where they don't get treated the same way they do here. Or, they get a lot more amenities at Clemson, but they get to just kind of come here and just play without all the pressure and without all that stress of the ACC, but they just get to enjoy it. And so I think it's important that we're having that balance. And that's what I want the uniqueness of the Liberty to be, is the culture that we have and all that we can provide these players.
Well, and I love that because that's the kind of the drum that I think has been banged this whole year, but for both clubs, is that culture piece of everybody's committed, everybody's pushing in the same direction. We've talked about it before on the podcast with the Triumph. You see it even in the style of play, right? But I love it because, I did a little bit of research. I may be wrong on this, but I think you are the only female assistant coach in USL League One right now.
Correct.
And then you have – so there's that huge piece right here where it's not just about inclusion, right? This is about hiring people who know what they're doing and can make stuff happen, right? And then on your end, empowering people to be ready for that as well by hiring an all-female staff for the Liberty. So we have this one portion of the culture where it's we are mentoring people, we are putting people in positions to succeed, no matter their background, and then at the same time pushing everybody in the same direction at both club levels. And I love that about just everything that's going on right now, both from the perspective of the Triumph and the Liberty. So that's a really cool thing. What's one last question for me, and then I'm going to hand it over to Jeremy.
Sure.
What's the one thing that's going to define success for you this year at the Liberty? What would you say is a successful season?
Win the division and get back to the playoffs. I think that is a doable thing. And then obviously playoffs is a whole different season.
Yeah.
And because we can do it. I think any team who invests and believes in themselves, I think once there's belief and the infrastructure and they have just a little bit of a taste of it, that taste can grow like a weed. So I think that's the one big thing for me. That's on the periphery of what people can see. Personally, professionally, internally, I get my satisfaction from watching these players take something from this experience, go where they're going next on their journey in the game, and succeed because they were successful here. And I have seen that. I saw it last year. I saw it the year before. If we can just add an ingredient into their recipe of success, then to me, I've done my job in 2.5 months.
Wow. Yeah, that's very well said. And, something we've talked about on the podcast some too is how you, Coach Carlson, and Mark Ward and Rick Wright all pretty continually demonstrate that growth mindset. You guys all have that education is always at the forefront of your messaging, and you're very intentional in the way you guys do things. And it like Brandon said, it has been really cool to watch. It's reinvigorated, I think, a lot of things in and around the club. And I think people are starting, you guys are transmitting things that people are starting to pick up on. And I think it's starting to really resonate with people. So it's a great job.
Great. Thank you.
Across the board from you guys. I know this year with the team, we're moving into a different conference, right? It's South Central, I believe. And that move will add some travel, a little bit more travel than in the past. How do you perceive that change affecting things this year compared to the last couple of years?
Well, it's about an extra hour and a half on a bus, but the biggest change is, at least with 2 of the trips, we will be going down or over, I guess, to south. the night before. So what really changes for us is the dynamic of travel, because we're going to, like, Birmingham will travel down there the night before, stay the night, play at, like, I think at 3:30, and then come home. And then Tennessee, which is, I believe, we're going to be playing a game on the outskirts of Nashville, the east side. So we'll travel over there the night before and then come home. But all the other trips will be day trips. So the difference with that from the previous division is we did everything in the day and came back. So really the biggest thing is adjusting players' schedules. Again, that's where the more of the, hey, you have to be more committed this summer, because it's getting a little bit more commitment oriented because you have to travel, and there's that added piece. But and the costs go up. That's a different topic. But that changed, budgeting and that sort of thing. But we have such a supportive ownership. And we have some just really great sponsors that have just done a great job of understanding that would have helped support us with that change. Now, it will look different from a style play, because you're not hitting a bunch of the teams that have a lot of ACC players, but you're going to get more teams that have a bit more SEC types of players, so that it'll look a little athletically, it'll look the same. The soccer might just look a little different. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and to build off of what you're talking about, those overnight trips, what does that do for your players? Because in my mind, I'm thinking all of a sudden you have an opportunity there to kind of help everybody lock in the night before.
Absolutely.
How does that change your process?
I mean, it's, a friendly college trip. You take them down there, you feed them, you have a little team meeting, you do a walk and a stretch in the morning. They're just not as lethargic when you just get off a bus rolling down the road and then trying to turn around and play a high level 90-minute game. I think the key was that the one good thing was that our kickoffs are earlier in the day, because it can make for a long day just dragging out all day. With the men, they have access to a lot of film, where we can do scout film and we can integrate some different things during the day with treatment and that kind of stuff. And they have their routine down. For us, it'll be similar, but I'm not sure how much access to film we're going to have, because the streaming side of our league is a little up in the air, because last year we had 11 sports. They went belly up. And now they're putting the onus on all of the clubs to do their own video and streaming. So as far as, us, I think more of it's going to be just, hey, we'll meet in the morning. We have breakfast. We do a walk and a stretch. We talk about our game plan, have a short meeting, maybe some film, and then head out, play the match, and then come home. And obviously you got some meals on the road. And, I think one of the things, I know you guys were going to ask me, or somebody wanted to ask me about recruiting, but I think one good thing is we will have a little bit of a following, because we do have some kids out of Georgia. And, we have some kids in this area where I think the nice, cool thing is that we would get some Liberty families traveling and following the team. So I was pretty excited about that. I think that will be, with two teams being in Georgia and having some Georgia players, being within the area. So I think that'll be a nice touch too, because they'll get to see family and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and to that point, when it comes to the team itself, I think at last count we have like 28 players listed or something like that. It's a big squad, which makes sense with the way the cadence of the league and all the moving parts. And I know coaches don't always love to talk about this type of thing, but are there some players you really see like that are going to be true leaders on this team? Or I mean, I know you want everyone to grow, and I know everyone's a part of this thing, but are there a couple of people you would be like, you know what? This girl is one who's going to really catch some eyes here.
Oh, yeah. I think, well, you've got your veterans, which we don't have as many as we haven't had in the past. But I think you're going to see a lot more out of Julie Mackin Just not just on the field, but I just think taking some ownership. She's trying to go to the Super League. She's going to want that platform. I think she knows we have a younger team, which when you have younger teams, they recover faster too physically. But there's a lot of energy behind that. And so we also have to nurture that energy. Sarah Jacobs, she's our oldest woman in the roster. She's always taken a leadership role and taking some ownership, but I'm really trying to expect more out of players that were younger when they came in, that are now older and have matured. So a player like Kat Cunningham, who played with us last year, played pretty much half the season until she got an injury, but I'd like to see her take more of a leadership role. Some of our academy kids who've come in, I think are not going to be shy. I think they just have these big personalities, and I think they know how I operate. They want to win. There's definitely a competitive cauldron coming with this group. But we're going to see players that are going to surprise us. I think that the girls from USC Upstate, they've had a lot of success. Sharif has done a great job with that women's program, and really bringing in some probably underrated players and really getting them to compete at a good mid-major level. And I think those kids are going to shine. They're competitive. They may not be super polished all the time, and everything looks the mistakes are going to be made, but they compete and they're athletic. And so I think you're going to see Nia Bocelli. I think you're going to see Ellie Arnold do great on set pieces. The young lady we just brought in, Leela Stark from Oral Roberts, a lot of energy, a kid that just buzzes around, has been playing some Power 5 teams this spring with Oral Roberts. I think she's going to get tested. The young lady from Wake Forest, Carly Wilson, she's not the most dominant, outspoken player for Wake, but I think my goal with her is to bring her into the fold here and really try to drive that out of her, because I think she's got it in her to have more of that, because she's played at such a high level. And really just, kind of formulating some of those ones that are coming out of these top mid-majors, have done really well in some of these Power 5 schools. And we haven't announced everyone yet. So, we've brought in some academy kids that played with me that are now in college or getting ready to go to college. And these are kids that won the Academy Cup with us. They've been with me for the last 2 years and now are getting their chance because they were young, and they were too young, but they were talented. And so I think you're just going to see a lot of energy and a buzz. So it's hard for me to really pinpoint one particular person in this bunch, but I think it's just going to naturally, organically take folds. But I do have, as some of the names that I've mentioned, expectations for some of these, newer players, but they're older. So, another one is Nicoletta Annucci, who played for the Citadel, very confident. I think that's the soldier mentality in her. And, I get that from being in my days at VMI and that grittiness. And so we're going to be a very gritty, feisty, competitive team. And my goal is to clean the soccer up. So they've got these personalities of just like really fiery personalities and emotion flying, passion flying, but I have to help them with the soccer. I got to clean the soccer part up. And so, but that part you can't coach, right? Exactly. That just comes with the DNA of the player. And I wanted more of that, and we needed more of it in different areas of the field, not just in certain areas. We needed it more well-rounded, I think. And so, there are players that people don't know about. They're going to hear about. Lauren Monday, she played at Christchurch. She's an underrated player, but I've never seen a kid tackle a tree. She'll tackle a tree, and she will head a truck, and she plays in the back. And I've had to help her clean up her game before she left to go to college and just to tidy it up. But you can't coach that. You can't coach a kid who's ready just to freaking smash a ball with her head like a Jamie Smith. But we can help improve the soccer. And so that's this division, as I mentioned before, being as athletic as it's going to probably be, maybe not the tidiest soccer, but we will get them playing soccer. That's the goal. But those pieces of their DNA you can't coach. And we needed some of that. We needed that grittiness and that savviness and that sassiness. And, you know, that's what makes it enjoyable to coach at the end of the day. So
yeah, and to your point there, it also makes it enjoyable to watch. I think people
absolutely.
Well.
I don't need them rolling around, right. Like, you know.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. The women do far less of that than the men. So,
so I hear, but I think I just get caught up in the moment. Like I got caught up in the moment in the men's game where the guy just sat down and just acted like he was hurt, and I was just like, I was screaming, like. You know, I have my moments, you know, because I leave it up to Rick and Mark to do it. But I was like, literally, this guy is killing. What a TW moment, right? Time waster. What a nincompoop. And it was just like, seriously, really? And no, in the women's game, you don't see much of that.
No, not anywhere near as much.
No, it's pretty funny, actually. But
oh, man.
Yeah. So, Coach Carlson, one thing I know that both me and Brandon wanted to ask you is, when it comes to thinking about what Coach Carlson soccer is, and like that can mean in terms of your philosophy, your game model, your vision, whatever that may mean, how do you want people to perceive what a Coach Carlson team is?
Well, I mentioned it earlier, right? Just the gritty attitude, the hardworking tenacity. I think I'm just built that way. I'm a lot calmer in my old age, but, you know, I was just one of those hard players. I got stuck in, I won headers, but I was good on the ball. And so I want my team to embrace all of the hardness that comes with the game, because I think that's the most enjoyable part, right? It's a little bit of the combativeness, but I want them to value the ball. And I want them to be really good on the ball and value the ball and know how to use the ball to solve problems. Building out of the back, possession oriented, but knowing, hey, there's going to be moments where we might have to play a little direct to break a press. So, you know, it's teaching them about strategy, teaching them about problem solving, teaching them about spatial awareness. You know, a good example of that would be when we were at the Academy Cup this year, and I had Elle Bissinger, who's going to go play at Clemson, and she's playing with us this summer. She's a center back. And so a lot of times you'll get these youth players, and the first inclination is just the ball's in the air, I'm just going to kick it back down the field. And it's like, no, look how much space you have around you. Take a touch, bring it down, collect it, and trust that they're good enough. So it's getting them to believe that, hey, I am good enough. I can control this ball, and now I can create the momentum and change the tempo, and we can now move the ball. And that's, you know, I want our game to be a very move the ball oriented, possession oriented, and then do creative things in the final third. So you're going to see a lot of similarities from how the philosophy is with our men's side. In that regard, because at the end of the day, we want to play soccer, and we don't want them just smashing the ball long. We want them, if they play long, it has a purpose. But we want to build out of the back. We want to play through the middle of the park. We want our good players to value the ball and be good on the ball and be comfortable on the ball, because at the end of the day, that's where they're going to be successful. So I'm not trying to create a track meet. You know, I usually tell them in the summer, you have a conditioning program that you're on, you have a fitness test you have to pass. That's all on your own. I'm here to coach soccer, and I'm here to teach you the game and make you a better soccer player, put you in positions where we can help you solve problems. And so, that's what you've seen the last 2 summers. And, and you've seen entertaining players like Marcella. What made her so entertaining? She wasn't the best athlete, but her feel for the game inside the 18-yard box, she just found ways to score goals. Mm-hmm. And so we have a lot of players who have a lot of creativity, are a bit of a bulldog, and it's teaching them how to fine-tune that and make it successful.
Yeah, well said.
I think one of my favorite – oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to ask, one thing that's been interesting to me, I guess, is with the coming Super League. How do you see that maybe changing what USLW is, or its sort of place in the ecosystem of women's soccer? Do you think that layering a new Division I division within USL on top, do you think that will bespeak some pretty big changes for USLW?
I have varying degrees of opinion on it. Obviously I want it to be successful, and, there's not that many teams in this first year. So, they're going to end up probably playing each other 4 times. And then, 2025, you're going to bring in, 2 or 3 new teams into the fold. I don't want it to fail, obviously. But I would hope that the NWSL and the USL can work together to create a platform for women's players to do the right thing for them. I think the NWSL has already capitalized on its, even if they're both at Division I, it's obviously at the top pillar of women's pro soccer across the world. And from their pay, from their investors, to everything right now. And so, but it also took a long time for them to get there. And I think it's established a platform where the Super League can be successful, but we just got to make sure that we don't throw everything in the kitchen sink at it so fast that we start making mistakes and it's not successful. But what it does offer is players in the NWSL, players coming out of college, the W League being another platform pool of players, and us being recruiters for the Super League. We're identifiers for the Super League. So that's kind of one of my roles within our division, is to work with our coaches to identify, call it the 4 or 5 top players in our division, and push them into the Super League if they're of age, if they're ready. And so it becomes another pool, an opportunity for women to be paid, maybe not at the same complete scale as the NWSL. So what I mean by that is so if you have an NWSL player sitting on the bench, she could probably make more money in a Super League team and play. Mm-hmm. And so what ends up happening is with the Super League, their calendar is going to be August to April.
Right.
NWSL ends, call it October. And now they re-sign their players, or their players are out on free agents, and then they get picked up by the NWSL. Because some players that got drafted and some players that were on trial with NWSL that didn't get picked up are now being picked up by Super League. So in some ways, it's kind of acting like a USL championship concept, even though with Division I status. Mm-hmm. And then they're also, the Super League is obviously building its franchises in areas where there's no NWSL. So you're going to have some players who want to go back home. So like DFW with the Dallas franchise, there's a lot of Dallas players that want to come back from overseas and play, or go back to Dallas and play. And so you're starting to see those markets, that will change the market landscape as well. So there's not one direct answer to that. but I think if you're going to do it, now's the time to do it when women's soccer and women's athletics is a hot market, and it's entertaining, and there's so much talent that hasn't been seen,
Right.
that we're just now seeing. A good example of that is Chloe Ricketts, who plays for the Spirit, who signed at 15. She was with a W League franchise last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so they probably did already know about her, but she got put on a different platform when she got brought into the W League fold. And so, and that's where those little stars are going to rise up, and you're going to find these new little diamonds in the rough. And hopefully it becomes a bigger pool of opportunity for our national teams as well. And so there's not one right or wrong answer to this. It's very opinionated. But I hope they take their time.
Right. Organic growth.
And some of it, it'll be organic. It's going to be slow. But they should get there because there's enough interest in it for sure.
Right. And to your point, a lot of communities who are very starved to see women's professional sports. So there's a big runway there. There's a lot of places in this country that I think will support this product. So
your markets, like I just take Charlotte and DF Dallas, Fort Worth right now. They're two massive women's soccer markets in the youth side. It's long past due, especially being my home, Dallas, long past due for them to have had something like this. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to ask it in a way that is that you don't have to answer specifically. How long do you think until Greenville is ready to experience something like that? Obviously, you've got a big academy. We'll call it community here, both on the guys and the girls side. You think 5 years? How long do you think until Greenville could support a women's pro team? I'm not asking when they're coming.
I would, in my opinion, and I've shared my professional opinion with some upper ownership, and I believe and I feel the right move is to get a forever home first.
Absolutely.
And it's like the movie The Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. And so I think we have to build that to build something to recruit them to. Our men have done such a good job of establishing their success. They deserve something. I think the upstate and Greenville deserve this type of environment because soccer is so big in the upstate and across the state line, to have something that is unique, where we can play and we can do other things in the venue as well, not just professional soccer. But when you build it, you have to build the necessities needed to sustain a women's pro team. I would say 4 or 5 years from more serious investment consideration. Once the Super League, we see how it does and how it sustains itself. Is our market ready for that? And do we have the right investors? If we have additional investors in the organization that come into the fold because of the stadium, have an interest in that. Because by then the question becomes, do we have a different tier in the women's platform like the men have, right? With MLS, Championship, League One. Do we start a different tier? And is that something that we can meet in that 4 or 5 years? So I think it's going to be under conversation at that point is the best time to have the conversation. Let the Super League transfold. Let some people do it. See what's successful. See what works. See what's not working. Where money's gained, where money's lost. And while that's all going on, we're putting a facility in place that can house 2 teams such as that.
Right.
Well, that's huge because, I even remember with the Houston Dash a while back. And there was that huge issue that came up with them where like there was just between the two teams in Houston, there was just a massive disparity in what they were being provided. And if we move too quickly on something, just because we want the status or whatever, right? To your point, like making a decision too quickly and trying to jump into something too quickly can lead to poor work environments for your players, right? And they don't get the same, we'll call it, not even amenities, just the same basic needs as the men's team, which is not fair for professional players.
Right. And it's tough. It's going to be tough. And the reason I say it's going to be tough is Charlotte's an hour and a half away. Right. Do we want to enter into that an hour and a half away? Or do we want to be something more unique that we're a developmental pathway and we create something different? My brain's wired a little bit in that regard is like, can we create, you call it semi-professional, you call it a League One concept. So it's a tier down, because there's so many W League teams now. And is it going to dilute this option a little bit where the buzz kind of dies off? So what changes that? Okay, now you have the buzz of the Super League and you got the W League and everybody's adding W League teams. Well, at the end of the day, what does it look like in the middle? Is there something that has to create some sort of connector? Because, Charlotte creates their academy pro infrastructure. Do we continue to have this U20 process with a women's pre-pro team and just have it at a higher stage, create a higher stage for it without heavy loading the funding at that level? So it's, I think we have to see where we're at in 4 or 5 years. But I think, if you're going to do that, we don't want to keep just moving venues. We want to have a forever home. We want to have it designed for a men's pro team and designed for a women's team, whether it turns pro or stays where it is. We're still providing them this unique experience.
Yeah. One thing I would also like to ask you, we talked a little bit about recruiting and putting together a roster. What would you say the relationships are like between you and a lot of these girls' college coaches?
I try to have open dialogue with them. I try to be honest with them. I think the biggest push that I try is when the players reach out to me is to make sure that they're having open dialogue with their coaches. So it put kind of more of the onus on the player to be the adult, to have the conversation with their coach about playing with us. And then, I try to reach out to them to say, hey, this is what we provide them. I send stuff out probably nationwide just about the Liberty, information about the Liberty. If they have players either from the area or interested in playing over the summer, here's what we provide them. And try to do an educational email tutorial about this is what we do. Obviously that first season for us really transformed who we were with those players. And so that gained a lot of interest. The tough part is everybody just started deciding they were going to have a W League team everywhere and anywhere. And so now it makes things, you got to get a little creative. And it's interesting because recruiting is like anything. You're not going to just go down one road to find players. You're going to have players return. You're going to have returning players bring a teammate. You're going to have tryouts. It's going to bring a couple of new faces into the fold, which happened this year that we weren't expecting. And then, relationships with some of the Power 5 coaches that I already have. And that opened door for new players to come into the fold as well. It's it's a network. And so I didn't take everyone. I did turn players away. I called players up from previous seasons who chose either they're not playing, they're injured, they want to go somewhere else for a different experience. And so it's, I went to college games this year. I went and watched players. I tried to get around to, not just the Clemson games of the world or the South Carolina games, but some of these smaller schools that, might have a little diamond in the rough, and really watched a lot of stuff online too. I mean, that's one of our biggest tools, because it doesn't cost us anything from an affordability standpoint. We watch a ton of games in that regard. And so the roster really got built based on the network, just talking to different people, talking to coaches saying, hey, can you provide an opportunity for this kid? Would you be interested in this kid? And so that creates a dialogue, and we can't take everybody. A lot of kids that want to stay for the summer are international students, because they don't want to go back home or don't have the same amenities. And so, we can only do so much for those types of players, because that costs more money, housing and meals and that kind of stuff. And so, so there wasn't, from the scouting, you have to get creative. You have to reach out to people on the college side. You have to return your conversations to players that have been with you in the past. You have to follow up with players who express interest in you, because they send you highlight videos, they send you information, and they do an inquiry. So there's all these different roads that we've traveled to form this group of players.
Well, we're excited to see this group of players for sure. And
yeah, me too.
Yeah, I know you're probably raring to get them out into training.
Yeah, I've got it all up on my dry erase board, positionings, not a depth chart. We do have some, like I said, we have some kids coming back from injuries, so they're not available yet. We have some that are on vacation early that won't be available till let's say halfway through the season, but they're good players. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to turn down that talent if it means having them for half the season. Right. So, but that's, you said 28. I think we're going to be right at around 32 with 4 goalkeepers. So about 28 field players, which is actually less than what I've normally had. And then, you can only dress 18 per game. So, and the way we've done it is we give them the 18 the night before, and then I always announce 2 alternates for that 18 to be prepared in case one of those 18 wakes up and has to go home. There's an emergency. They get sick. Mm-hmm. I mean, ever since COVID, you just never know what's getting ready to happen. And so, rightfully so, that's ended up having to happen to us. We've had to pull one of those alternates in at the last minute. So, a lot of it's just detail and logistics and being organized. No, I'm excited about the group. I've had some interaction with some of these new ones, and they're just excited. I think it's the energy. And Rick could probably attest to that. We brought in so many new young men's players, they're 19, they're 20, and, there's just the energy. I mean, I know he'll tell you he's old, but his energy level, and I think that changes the culture. It changes the mentality of the energy in the room. So it's not just on the field, it's in the locker room. We talk about culture, just that energy and that drive and being excited. Mm-hmm. About it, because I know that a lot of the players who've come and played at the Liberty in the summer are like, wow, you guys, the home games are like, you do this right. I'm like, yeah, told you. I'm not making it up. We're going to go down here to this place, and it's going to just be like we just showed up on a farm and we're just going to play. But here, we're getting all the bells and whistles. Yeah. So, and I think that's what drives kids to come and drives them to come back, is the enjoyment of the atmosphere we put in front of them.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And I mean, we got a big game, May 10th, right? That's the date. Is it 7:00?
It is 7:00 against Asheville City.
A big game.
It's a tough game, right? It's always a big crosstown rival, but they're always a good side. You know, they've got a new coach. They've brought in some really good players. You know, some UNC players. You know, some old girls. But I mean, hey, they can play. Age is just a number. So, it'll be a tough matchup. I don't think any of these games are ever easy. You know, if you're going to tell me it's like my first year when we played the Courage and we scored 4 goals in the first half, and then the next year their coach wouldn't play me in the first game of the season. He said, "I'm not playing you guys first this year." I said, "Listen, if somebody was going to tell me I was going to score 4 goals against you in the first half, I'd be like, yeah, you've had way too many wicked wheat ales. It's not going to happen." So it was just crazy. I mean, that was just crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think I literally sat there as like, holy crap, it's already 4-0 and we're not even in, it's like the 40-minute mark. Yeah. So, and then Courage wouldn't play me in the first game the next year. So, and then they went to the final. So it's, you know, it's about not necessarily having the best talents, about putting the best product on the fields and kids who are bought in. And this group's excited, and I'm excited for them. And I think that energy says a lot. So,
yeah. Well, if you're listening to this podcast and you were on the fence about the Liberty, I don't think you should be anymore. We've had a great conversation with Coach Carlson here. The players are excited and ready to go. May 10th can't come soon enough. If you don't have your tickets yet, grab your tickets, get to the game that night, and get ready to cheer loud for the Liberty, because who knows, maybe they'll score 4 goals in the first half yet again.
Hey,
Yeah.
You asked me one of the goals, and, you know, we're goal setters around here. Our goals is to score goals. Our goal is to score goals, because that's what's fun. So, exactly. Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much.
Absolutely.
Brandon, Jeremy, thank you guys for your time and the questions. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your impact on local soccer. As someone born and raised here, truly appreciate what you mean to soccer in this area and what you've brought to the area.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. That means a lot.
Yeah.
You gon' know it when I slide, yeah.